I thought I had it all: love, a fiancé who seemed devoted, and a life full of promise. Emma had been my world since the moment I met her, and I genuinely believed she felt the same. Everything about her fascinated me: the way she laughed, her sharp mind, and the effortless way she made everyone around her feel important. I remember countless nights where I would just watch her sleep, feeling lucky to have someone so perfect by my side. Before we continue with the story, kindly like, share, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Little did I know that perfection was only an illusion, a carefully crafted mask hiding the truth she would reveal in the most humiliating way possible. For months, I had been planning our engagement celebration, excited about the life we would build together, thinking that nothing could possibly go wrong. But life, as I would painfully learn, has a way of teaching lessons when you least expect it. The night that changed everything began like any other. We were invited to a family dinner at Emma's house, an event that I had anticipated with excitement because it was supposed to be a celebration of our engagement. I had spent the entire day preparing, ensuring my suit was impeccable, my hair neat, and my words carefully chosen so that I would leave a lasting impression on her family and friends. I walked into that room brimming with confidence, believing that the woman I loved would support and honor me. But within moments, the illusion shattered. I still remember the way she looked at me, a cold smirk replacing the warmth I had once adored, as if she had rehearsed her humiliation for weeks in secret. I felt my chest tighten, a lump forming in my throat as I tried to understand what was happening, but the words came swiftly and mercilessly. "Are you serious?" she exclaimed, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is the best you could do?" I was expecting something more. More ambitious. More impressive. "You really think you can provide the life I deserve?" Her words cut deeper than any blade, slicing through my heart with precision. I stood there frozen, unable to respond, my mind scrambling for an explanation, a defense, anything that could justify my existence in her eyes. Around us, her friends and family exchanged uncomfortable glances, some trying to hide smirks, others clearly bewildered by the venom in her tone. The room, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt suffocating, as if the air itself had turned against me. Every ounce of confidence I had carried into that dinner evaporated, leaving me exposed, vulnerable, and humiliated in a way I had never experienced before. I wanted to disappear, to escape the shame that spread across my body like wildfire. My fiancée, the woman I had planned to spend the rest of my life with, was tearing me apart piece by piece, and the worst part was that I realized she had no intention of stopping. Her eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction, and every word she spoke seemed designed to inflict maximum pain. She mocked my background, ridiculed my modest beginnings, and questioned my potential to succeed in life. In that moment, I understood the depth of her true character and the superficiality of the love I had believed she felt. I had thought we were equals, partners in life, but I now saw that she valued wealth and status far more than the man who loved her unconditionally. It was a betrayal that shook me to my very core, and as I stood there in stunned silence, I felt my dreams of a shared future crumble before my eyes. When the dinner ended, I left without a word, walking through the night with a heavy heart and shattered pride. The streets felt colder than usual, the city lights mocking my misery as I wandered aimlessly, replaying every humiliating word over and over in my mind. I questioned everything I had believed about love, loyalty, and the woman I thought I knew. It was not just heartbreak, it was a profound lesson in understanding human nature and the reality that some people will never truly value what you offer unless it meets their selfish standards. I spent the entire night contemplating my next steps, not knowing whether I would ever recover from the public embarrassment or muster the strength to rebuild my life from the ruins she had left behind. By the time dawn broke, I made a silent vow to myself, would rise again, not merely as the man I had been but as someone stronger, wiser, and more formidable. I refused to let that night define me, and I knew deep down that my humiliation could become the fuel for a transformation that even Emma could not foresee. I would take my pain, my anger, and my heartbreak and channel it into creating a life so powerful, so extraordinary, that those who doubted me would be left speechless. That moment of humiliation was not the end of my story, it was the spark that ignited the journey of becoming the man who would one day return, not just to reclaim my dignity, but to surpass every expectation and teach a lesson that could never be forgotten. In the days that followed Emma's humiliation, I felt like a ghost wandering through my own life, unable to recognize the man staring back at me in the mirror. The reflection I saw no longer resembled the confident, ambitious man who had once dreamed of building a life with her. It was someone broken, someone exposed to the cruelty of love turned shallow. Every familiar place reminded me of her words, every message or notification felt like a mockery of my shattered dignity. I began replaying that dinner in my mind endlessly, each memory sharper than the last, each cruel statement more cutting, until the pain felt unbearable. Friends tried to console me, offering platitudes like, "You deserve better," or, "Time heals all wounds," but their words sounded hollow. It was not the end of a relationship I mourned, it was the exposure of my trust, my belief in her authenticity, and that betrayal was something no simple comfort could erase. Sleep became a stranger as I wrestled with my emotions in the quiet darkness of my apartment. I would lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, tracing the imagined contours of her smirk, the look of satisfaction in her eyes as she ridiculed me publicly. My mind oscillated between anger, confusion, and disbelief, and the constant replaying of her cruel words became a torment I could not escape. I questioned everything I had invested in her, wondering if I had been blind all along, deceived by charm and beauty into believing that love alone was enough. But it wasn't just that she had humiliated me, it was that the person I trusted most had deliberately chosen to inflict pain for her own selfish amusement. Understanding the depth of her betrayal was excruciating, and I realized that the world I thought I knew had shifted, leaving me exposed to the cold truth of human nature. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see the full extent of what her betrayal meant. Emma had never truly loved me, nor had she respected the values I cherished. Her obsession with wealth and status was a harsh reminder that her affections were conditional, dependent on what I could provide rather than who I truly was. I felt a cocktail of emotions I had never experienced before, grief for what I had lost, rage for what I had endured, and disbelief at the depth of deception that had existed beneath the surface of our relationship. My heart, once brimming with trust, now felt like a battlefield, scarred by the revelation that even those closest to us can conceal their true intentions. Each interaction, each memory of her laughter, now seemed tainted, a carefully constructed facade designed to keep me tethered to a lie. In that period of reflection, I began questioning not only Emma but myself as well. How had I been so blind? How had I allowed myself to be vulnerable, to invest so much emotionally in someone who could wield my love like a weapon? I scoured my memories, analyzing every gesture, every word, hoping to pinpoint the moment when the illusion had begun, the moment when her true character had been hidden beneath a mask of charm. The process was agonizing, yet necessary. Pain, I realized, was a teacher, and betrayal had lessons that would force me to evolve. I couldn't remain the man she thought she could mock so easily. I needed to become stronger, smarter, and more self-aware, transforming my heartbreak into a source of empowerment. During those long, sleepless nights, I also grappled with a profound sense of loneliness. People could sympathize, but they could never truly understand the humiliation I felt, the way her words had reverberated in my mind, echoing long after the dinner had ended. I withdrew from social interactions, retreating into my own thoughts, reflecting on my goals, my ambitions, and what I wanted from life. I realized that healing required more than time, it required deliberate action. I had to rebuild not just my confidence, but my identity, separate from her judgments and criticisms. This period of isolation, painful as it was, allowed me to confront the rawest parts of myself, forcing me to recognize my potential and the power I had yet to unlock. Then came the moment of revelation, the truth that Emma had never been in love with me, only with the idea of a life I could theoretically provide. It was not just a personal betrayal, it was a profound lesson about the superficiality of people who judge worth by wealth and status alone. That knowledge ignited something within me, a mixture of anger and determination. I could wallow in my sorrow, allowing her cruelty to define me, or I could rise above it, proving not to her, but to myself, that I was capable of achieving greatness. It was a turning point, a realization that the humiliation I endured could be transformed into fuel for ambition, a driving force that would propel me toward success on my own terms. I began to channel my pain into concrete action, dedicating myself to personal growth and business ventures. The nights spent crying on my bedroom floor were replaced with hours of strategic planning, research, and networking. I invested in myself like never before, physically, mentally, and emotionally, refusing to allow past humiliation to dictate my future. Slowly but surely, I started building an empire, brick by brick, using the lessons of betrayal to sharpen my instincts and harden my resolve. Every setback became a challenge, every doubt a motivator, and every memory of Emma's ridicule a reminder that I would never again allow someone to diminish my worth in such a public, painful way. Through this journey, I learned a profound truth: pain and betrayal, though excruciating, are often the catalysts for the greatest transformations. Emma's actions, as cruel and devastating as they were, became the spark that ignited my rise. The humiliation that had once felt like a crushing weight on my chest was slowly converted into the fuel I needed to achieve greatness. And as I began to find my footing, regaining confidence and reclaiming control over my destiny, I made another silent vow, to not only rebuild my life but to one day return in a way that would redefine power, respect, and love on my terms. I was no longer the man she could belittle. I was becoming something much greater, and the world, I promised myself, would soon see it too. After weeks of pain and endless reflection, I realized that simply nursing my wounds would never be enough. The humiliation Emma had inflicted on me had revealed a truth I could no longer ignore: life is too short to allow others to dictate your worth. I decided that if I was to reclaim my dignity and forge a future free of ridicule, I had to reinvent myself entirely. Reinvention was not just about achieving wealth, it was about becoming a version of myself so formidable that no one could ever underestimate or humiliate me again. I knew the journey would be long, painful, and full of sacrifices, but the fire inside me, ignited by betrayal, would not let me settle for mediocrity. Each day became a deliberate step in rebuilding the man I had always wanted to be, a man of vision, power, and undeniable presence. The first step in my reinvention was education. I immersed myself in the world of business, finance, and entrepreneurship, consuming every book, article, and lecture I could find. I studied the lives of successful individuals who had risen from obscurity, analyzing their decisions, their strategies, and the mindset that allowed them to excel. I began applying their lessons to my own life, meticulously planning each move, from investments to networking. Every night, I would write down goals and strategies, breaking them into actionable steps, ensuring that my progress was measurable and unstoppable. The humiliation I had suffered became my daily motivator, a constant reminder that I could no longer afford to falter or be underestimated. I was determined to turn my pain into a blueprint for success. In addition to mental and strategic preparation, I focused on personal growth. I refined my appearance, knowing that first impressions often determine opportunities. I adopted a disciplined fitness routine, not out of vanity, but because I understood the value of presence and confidence. I attended social gatherings and professional events with purpose, using every interaction as a chance to learn, grow, and expand my influence. I surrounded myself with individuals who were ambitious, driven, and supportive, leaving behind anyone whose presence reminded me of weakness or doubt. The reinvention was not merely external, it was about strengthening my mindset, cultivating resilience, and nurturing the unshakable confidence that no humiliation could ever break. Financial reinvention was perhaps the most critical component. I identified industries with growth potential, seeking ventures where I could maximize returns while leveraging my strengths. I invested wisely, studied market trends, and learned to anticipate risks with precision. The nights of despair and anger were transformed into nights of calculation, strategy, and relentless action. I refused to allow fear or past failures to cloud my judgment. Slowly, my efforts began to bear fruit. Small successes became stepping stones to greater achievements, and with each milestone, I felt my confidence and resolve grow stronger. The man who had once been mocked for his modest beginnings was now crafting an empire that demanded respect. Networking and relationships played a significant role in my transformation. I realized that success is rarely a solitary journey, it requires connections, mentorship, and influence. I approached every interaction with authenticity and purpose, seeking mentors who could guide me and partners who shared my vision. I learned to navigate the complex world of business with tact and intelligence, mastering the art of persuasion and negotiation. Every person I met became a lesson, and I absorbed their experiences like a sponge. I became not just a man with ambition, but a man with the wisdom and skill to convert opportunities into tangible achievements, and every encounter strengthened my path toward reinvention. Yet, the journey was not without setbacks. There were moments when deals fell through, investments failed, and doubt crept in like a shadow. Each obstacle tested my determination, forcing me to confront fear, frustration, and exhaustion. But I refused to surrender. I reminded myself daily of the humiliation I had endured, the words that had wounded me, and the vision of the man I was becoming. I learned to embrace failure as a teacher rather than a defeat, understanding that resilience is forged in adversity. Every challenge overcame became a testament to my unwavering commitment to my reinvention, and slowly, I began to see the man in the mirror not as a victim, but as a force capable of achieving anything. Over the years, my empire grew steadily. I diversified my ventures, investing in technology, real estate, and startups, each move calculated with precision and foresight. My wealth became a reflection of my discipline, intellect, and perseverance. More importantly, my confidence became unshakable. I no longer feared judgment, ridicule, or betrayal, for I had transformed my pain into power. Every boardroom meeting, networking event, and negotiation became an arena where I asserted myself with authority, commanding respect not through intimidation, but through competence, vision, and undeniable presence. The man Emma once mocked had become someone the world could not ignore, and the irony was not lost on me. Yet, amid all the professional and financial transformation, I never lost sight of the personal lessons. I had learned that true reinvention requires patience, resilience, and integrity. It is not about revenge, nor about proving others wrong, it is about proving to oneself that no obstacle is insurmountable. I had grown not only in wealth and status but in wisdom and character, understanding that the journey of reinvention is continuous, requiring vigilance, humility, and the courage to embrace change. And in that moment, standing at the crossroads of past humiliation and future triumph, I knew the next chapter of my life would be defined not by revenge, but by the profound success and authentic love I was destined to claim. It had been nearly 5 years since Emma humiliated me at that dinner, and in all that time, I had grown in ways I never imagined possible. My wealth had multiplied, my confidence had solidified, and my presence now commanded respect wherever I went. I had built an empire from the ground up, and the pain of betrayal had transformed into a quiet, burning satisfaction. Yet, even with all that success, I had not expected that fate would orchestrate an encounter that would both thrill and amuse me in equal measure. It happened at a charity gala, an event I attended under the guise of philanthropy, though I secretly relished the idea of observing the world from a position of power and influence I once could only dream of. The night was vibrant, filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of champagne glasses, yet my attention was drawn to a familiar figure across the room. Emma. Time had done little to soften her features, she was still beautiful, poised, and surrounded by an air of superiority that had always irritated me. My heart, however, did not stir as it once had when I thought of her. Instead, I felt a cold amusement and an odd satisfaction, knowing that the man she once belittled now commanded attention in a way that she could not ignore. But she was not alone. Standing beside her, exuding warmth, intelligence, and charm, was Chloe, Emma's best friend, a woman I had secretly admired from afar but never dared to pursue because she had always been in the orbit of someone I thought I loved. Seeing Chloe, I felt an unexpected rush of excitement. She smiled at someone across the room, unaware that I had spotted her. There was a light in her eyes that Emma had never possessed, a genuine kindness and spark of life that made her stand out even amidst the grandeur of the gala. I realized in that instant that while Emma had humiliated me and sought to diminish my self-worth, Chloe represented something entirely different, an opportunity for real connection, genuine admiration, and a love untainted by greed or arrogance. The irony was not lost on me. The woman I had been mocked by had brought me face to face with the woman I was meant to cherish, and I could not help but smile quietly to myself. I approached the women with confidence, allowing my aura of success to precede me. Emma's eyes widened slightly, the first flicker of surprise revealing that she had not expected to see me at such an event, looking every bit the man she once scorned. Chloe, on the other hand, greeted me with a warm smile that spoke volumes about her character, her sincerity immediately drawing me in. We exchanged pleasantries, discussing the gala, the charity initiatives, and mutual acquaintances. Each word I spoke carried the weight of experience and authority, the subtle charm of a man who had overcome adversity and achieved the extraordinary. I noticed Emma's subtle tension, the way her posture stiffened, and a flicker of envy crossed her face. She realized, perhaps too late, that the man she had once humiliated was no longer one she could control. The conversation with Chloe flowed effortlessly, revealing shared interests, common goals, and an undeniable chemistry that neither of us could ignore. I found myself laughing freely, a sound I hadn't realized I had missed in the presence of someone who truly understood me. It was intoxicating, this connection, and I sensed that Chloe was beginning to see me not just as a successful entrepreneur, but as a man with depth, integrity, and passion. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, sharing insights from my journey, lessons learned from betrayal, and the philosophy that had guided me to this point. Every word, every shared glance, and every moment of laughter strengthened the bond between us, and I could see Emma's frustration growing by the second. As the evening progressed, I noticed the subtle ways Emma tried to reassert her presence, leaning in, attempting to interject, and reminding everyone within earshot of our shared past. But it was futile. I had moved beyond the humiliation she had once inflicted, and her attempts at control only highlighted her insecurity. Chloe's eyes, filled with curiosity and admiration, never wavered from me. I realized that this was a pivotal moment, a chance to not only enjoy the fruits of my reinvention but to explore a relationship built on mutual respect, authenticity, and genuine affection. The dynamics of power had shifted entirely. I was no longer the man she could mock, I was a man with choices, agency, and the ability to redefine love on my terms. The encounter ended with a casual agreement to meet again, though in my mind, I already envisioned the possibilities. As I watched Emma leave with a mixture of jealousy and disbelief, I felt no malice, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that my journey had prepared me for this very moment. Chloe's presence lingered in my thoughts long after the gala ended. Her laughter, her intellect, and the warmth of her smile were etched in my memory. I knew that the path forward would not be easy. Relationships built in the shadow of past pain require patience, honesty, and careful navigation. Yet, for the first time in years, I felt the exhilarating thrill of hope and anticipation, the realization that life had, in its own strange way, brought me an unexpected second chance at love. That night, I reflected on the twists of fate and the irony of life. Emma's betrayal, the humiliation I had endured, and the painstaking journey of reinvention had all led me to this very moment. I realized that the universe has a way of balancing the scales, often in ways that are both surprising and deeply satisfying. Chloe was a reminder that genuine connections are worth more than wealth, status, or social validation. The encounter had reinforced a vital truth: the past does not define us, but how we respond to it can shape every aspect of our future. With that understanding, I embraced the possibilities that lay ahead, ready to explore a love that was authentic, reciprocal, and deeply fulfilling. After that first encounter with Chloe, I understood that the dynamics had shifted entirely, and I intended to navigate them with precision. The humiliation I had endured at Emma's hands had left me wounded, but it had also sharpened my instincts and made me acutely aware of the subtle nuances of power and influence. I was no longer the naive, heartbroken man who had once been laughed at in a crowded dining room. I had become someone who understood the strategic importance of timing, presence, and perception. Every gesture, every word, every glance could be leveraged to communicate authority, confidence, and control, and I intended to use these skills carefully, not for cruelty, but for ensuring that the past could never diminish my future again. I began intentionally cultivating my interactions with Chloe, knowing that genuine connection required patience and authenticity. I invited her to private meetings under professional pretenses, suggesting collaborative opportunities for her philanthropic interests and my business initiatives. While we discussed strategies and plans, I observed her carefully, noting the kindness in her demeanor, the intelligence behind her questions, and the genuine enthusiasm she exhibited for meaningful causes. I realized that she was a rare combination of brilliance and heart, someone whose presence could not only challenge me intellectually but also nurture the emotional depth I had long sought. Every moment spent with her reinforced the realization that this relationship would never be about control or dominance but about mutual respect, admiration, and authentic connection. Emma, of course, noticed the growing rapport between us, and I could sense the flicker of recognition in her eyes when I interacted with Chloe. It was subtle at first, a tightened jaw, a brief glance of disbelief, but gradually, her unease became more pronounced. I was careful not to gloat or flaunt my success. Instead, I focused on building a foundation of genuine connection, letting Emma's growing anxiety be a silent witness to my transformation. There was a satisfying irony in watching her, once the orchestrator of my humiliation, struggle to comprehend that the man she had scorned was now thriving beyond her imagination. The balance of power had shifted entirely, and I was in full command of my narrative. As Chloe and I grew closer, our conversations deepened, extending beyond professional collaborations into personal stories, dreams, and aspirations. I shared with her glimpses of my journey, the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the relentless drive that had propelled me toward success. Unlike Emma, who had belittled me, Chloe listened with empathy and genuine interest, offering insights, encouragement, and understanding that rekindled a sense of trust one had almost forgotten. Our connection was a blend of intellectual stimulation and emotional resonance, a dynamic that felt effortless yet profound. I realized that Chloe's presence was not only a chance at love but also a validation of the personal growth I had achieved, a living testament to the power of resilience and reinvention. The thrill of this connection was heightened by the awareness of Emma's silent observation. She could not interfere, could not manipulate, and could not humiliate me again. I was free to express myself fully, and in doing so, I allowed Chloe to see the man I had become, the man forged from pain, tempered by ambition, and strengthened by resilience. The contrast between the two women was stark and undeniable. Emma represented superficiality, ego, and entitlement, while Chloe embodied authenticity, intelligence, and warmth. I began to understand that the ultimate measure of power was not revenge or dominance, but the ability to choose freely, to invest my time, energy, and affection where it was genuinely valued. In addition to nurturing the connection with Chloe, I strategically positioned myself in social and professional circles where influence mattered. I attended galas, conferences, and elite gatherings, ensuring that my visibility was both commanding and subtle. I allowed my reputation to precede me, showcasing competence, vision, and integrity without resorting to arrogance. I learned to read social cues with precision, recognizing when to assert myself, when to step back, and when to allow others to witness my success organically. Every calculated action reinforced the impression that I was not only successful but also self-assured, someone who commanded respect naturally rather than demanding it. Throughout this period, I also began mentoring others and investing in causes I believed in, understanding that true power extended beyond personal wealth. The ability to influence, inspire, and create opportunities for others amplified my presence in ways mere money could not. Chloe, naturally drawn to meaningful work, became a partner in these efforts, and our collaboration strengthened both our bond and my sense of purpose. It was a profound realization that the game of power was not about domination or vengeance, it was about creating influence, building authenticity, and exercising discretion, ensuring that those who had once underestimated me could see, without question, the full measure of what I had become. The subtle dance between Emma, Chloe, and me reached a crescendo at a high-profile event where all three of us were present. Emma, attempting to assert her presence, could only watch as I engaged effortlessly with Chloe, sharing insights, ideas, and laughter. She realized, in a moment of clarity, that the man she had humiliated was no longer tethered to her judgment or approval. Chloe, fully aware of the past dynamics, appreciated the sincerity, strength, and depth I now brought to our connection. In that moment, I understood that the true game of power was not about humiliation or revenge, it was about transformation, choice, and the quiet assertion of self-worth that could never again be undermined by another's ego. By the end of that evening, I had solidified both my personal and emotional victories. I had nurtured a genuine connection with Chloe, while Emma remained a spectator to the evolution she had indirectly inspired. I had learned that the truest measure of power lies not in wealth or social standing alone, but in the ability to reclaim agency over one's life, to direct one's path with purpose, and to engage in relationships that are grounded in mutual respect and authenticity. The man I once was, humiliated, insecure, and heartbroken, had been replaced by a man of influence, wisdom, and unwavering confidence. And in that realization, I finally felt the profound satisfaction of knowing that the game of power had been won, not through cruelty or domination, but through resilience, transformation, and the quiet, undeniable force of self-mastery. The moment had arrived, the moment I had envisioned countless times in my mind, the moment where the culmination of years of pain, perseverance, and transformation would finally meet reality. I had meticulously planned my next steps, knowing that timing and strategy were essential. Chloe and I had grown close, a bond forged in shared respect, laughter, and mutual understanding, and I knew that the world needed to witness the man I had become. Emma had been present at every step, a silent observer of my evolution, unaware that the final act would leave her utterly speechless. I was ready to reveal myself, not in anger or vengeance, but as a demonstration of resilience, strength, and undeniable success. The opportunity came at a high-profile business gala, one attended by the city's elite, the media, and influential figures from across industries. Chloe and I arrived together, the air around us charged with anticipation and quiet excitement. As we mingled, I noticed Emma's gaze lock onto me, her eyes widening with recognition and disbelief. The subtle smirk she had once worn so confidently was gone, replaced by a mixture of uncertainty and apprehension. I could sense the internal calculations running through her mind, the realization that the man she had humiliated years ago was no longer the person she once dismissed. I let her stew in that moment, allowing the tension to build naturally without any overt display of pride or arrogance. Chloe, unaware of the exact depth of my past with Emma, engaged me in conversation about the gala's initiatives, philanthropy, and the latest business developments. I spoke with calm authority, sharing insights from my journey, my successes, and the lessons I had learned. Every word was deliberate, every gesture controlled, projecting confidence, intelligence, and a charisma that drew people in. I noticed Emma's subtle attempts to insert herself into the conversation, but her efforts were futile. The transformation was complete, I was no longer the man she could dominate or humiliate. My accomplishments spoke for themselves, and in the presence of Chloe and the wider audience, my authority was undeniable. As the evening progressed, the media and attendees began to notice the dynamic between Chloe and me. Whispers spread through the crowd, subtle glances were exchanged, and the recognition of my status and presence became palpable. Emma's posture grew increasingly tense, her attempts to regain attention failing as I effortlessly navigated conversations and engagements with grace and poise. Chloe laughed at my jokes, asked insightful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in every aspect of my life. The contrast between her warmth and Emma's cold, jealous observation was stark and undeniable. For the first time, I felt a sense of satisfaction that was not rooted in malice but in the quiet triumph of personal growth and self-realization. The highlight of the evening arrived when I was invited to speak on stage about a philanthropic project I had spearheaded. The crowd listened intently as I shared the story of my journey, from heartbreak and humiliation to resilience, reinvention, and success. I spoke not to boast, but to inspire, weaving in the lessons learned from betrayal and the power of perseverance. Chloe stood beside me, supportive and smiling, her presence a testament to the authenticity of our connection. Emma, seated in the front row, could only watch in stunned silence as the man she once scorned delivered a speech filled with confidence, humility, and undeniable authority. The transformation was on full display, and there was no hiding it. After the speech, photographers and journalists surrounded us, capturing images of Chloe and me together. I noticed Emma's eyes narrowing as she realized that her previous influence over my life had been irrevocably lost. I allowed myself a quiet smile, knowing that her astonishment was a reflection of the very journey she had inadvertently set in motion. Chloe, unaware of the full scope of Emma's past behavior, continued to engage with me genuinely, her admiration for my achievements clear in her attentive expressions and thoughtful questions. The public nature of the event amplified the impact of the reveal, ensuring that my transformation was witnessed by a wide audience, including those who had once doubted me. Later that evening, in a more private setting, I took Chloe aside and shared the truth of my past, the betrayal, the humiliation, and the journey that had led me to this point. She listened intently, her eyes reflecting empathy, understanding, and admiration. I realized in that moment that this revelation strengthened our bond rather than creating distance. She saw the man I had become, forged in the fires of adversity, and respected both my vulnerability and my strength. Emma, observing from afar, could do nothing but witness the authenticity and depth of our connection, unable to interfere or diminish the significance of what had unfolded. By the end of the evening, I understood that the reveal had achieved everything I had intended. It demonstrated the power of resilience, the rewards of perseverance, and the transformative potential of personal growth. I had returned not as a man seeking revenge, but as a man who had claimed his worth, redefined his path, and chosen a love built on respect, authenticity, and shared values. Emma's presence, once a source of pain, had become a backdrop against which my triumph was highlighted, a reminder that humiliation can be a catalyst for profound growth. Chloe and I walked away from the gala hand in hand, our connection deepened and solidified, ready to face the next chapter of our lives together. In reflecting on that evening, I recognized a profound truth: the reveal was not about Emma, her judgment, or her past actions. It was about me reclaiming my narrative, asserting my agency, and embracing a life that I had earned through relentless effort and unwavering determination. The journey from humiliation to triumph had been arduous, filled with moments of doubt, struggle, and introspection, but it had culminated in a victory far greater than I could have imagined. Chloe's presence, support, and admiration were not just rewards, they were affirmations that true success lies in authenticity, resilience, and the courage to rise above the past. And in that moment, I felt an unparalleled sense of accomplishment, knowing that the reveal had not only marked the turning point of my personal journey but also heralded the beginning of a life filled with love, purpose, and fulfillment beyond measure. After the reveal at the gala, the trajectory of my life shifted in ways I had long imagined but never fully anticipated. Chloe and I began spending more time together, not merely as partners in social or philanthropic endeavors, but as two individuals discovering the depth of emotional intimacy that had been absent in my previous relationships. Every conversation, every shared laugh, and every quiet moment reinforced the realization that this was different. This was love built on mutual respect, trust, and admiration. Unlike Emma, who had measured affection through superficial standards of wealth and status, Chloe's interest in me was authentic, grounded in who I had become and the character I embodied. We spent countless evenings discussing dreams, fears, and ambitions, slowly weaving a shared vision of a future that neither of us had anticipated but both desired. I found myself revealing parts of myself that had long been buried beneath the armor I had constructed during my rise to success, the moments of vulnerability, the self-doubt, and the haunting memories of humiliation. Chloe listened without judgment, offering empathy, encouragement, and insight, reminding me that love could exist without pretense or expectation. It was liberating, intoxicating even, to experience a connection so deep and genuine. I realized that the heartbreak I had endured was not just a painful chapter in my life but a preparation for the kind of love I was now experiencing, one that demanded authenticity, patience, and emotional courage. As our relationship deepened, I noticed how much Chloe complemented my life, not merely through companionship but through shared purpose and vision. She was intelligent, compassionate, and fiercely independent, yet willing to build a partnership that balanced mutual growth with personal freedom. Together, we explored ventures that aligned with our values, supporting charitable initiatives, nurturing startups, and mentoring young entrepreneurs. Every success we achieved together strengthened our bond, and I could see the admiration and trust in her eyes growing as we faced challenges and celebrated triumphs side by side. The synergy between us was undeniable. It was as if the universe had orchestrated our paths to converge at precisely the right moment. The contrast between Chloe and Emma became increasingly evident, not out of malice or comparison, but as a reflection of growth and discernment. Emma, who had once seemed indispensable to my world, was now a distant memory, a symbol of lessons learned and strength gained. Chloe, on the other hand, represented a living embodiment of the values I now held dear: integrity, empathy, and genuine affection. I could finally appreciate the magnitude of my personal evolution, recognizing that the pain of betrayal and humiliation had been a necessary crucible, shaping me into a man capable of sustaining a love that was deep, meaningful, and mutually empowering. We spent weekends exploring new experiences together, from philanthropic trips to quiet moments at art galleries, and even simple afternoons discussing books and current events over coffee. Each interaction revealed new layers of Chloe's character, her intellect, humor, and warmth solidifying the connection we shared. For the first time in years, I felt completely at ease, free to be myself without fear of judgment, ridicule, or rejection. It was a stark contrast to my past with Emma, where appearances and social perception had always dictated the terms of our interactions. With Chloe, authenticity was celebrated, and I found immense joy in reciprocating that trust and openness. Family and friends soon noticed the bond between us, and their approval became a testament to the sincerity of our connection. People who had witnessed my earlier humiliation were now seeing the full measure of my transformation, not just in wealth and status, but in emotional maturity, discernment, and the ability to cultivate a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. Chloe's presence amplified my sense of fulfillment, reminding me that success is not solely measured by material achievements but by the quality of relationships and the depth of emotional connection we cultivate. In her, I had found not just love, but a partner, a confidant, and a reflection of the values I had fought so hard to embody. As our love blossomed, I reflected often on the journey that had brought me here. The humiliation, betrayal, and heartbreak that once felt unbearable had been essential catalysts for growth, fortitude, and discernment. Chloe's unwavering support and affection allowed me to embrace vulnerability once more, transforming past scars into reminders of resilience and wisdom. Every shared smile, touch, and moment of intimacy reinforced the realization that love, when grounded in authenticity, is transformative. It empowers, heals, and elevates both partners, enabling them to achieve greatness together while nurturing the emotional and spiritual dimensions of their bond. Looking forward, I began envisioning a life with Chloe that transcended mere companionship. I imagined building a family, a home filled with laughter, learning, and mutual encouragement. We discussed values, ambitions, and the legacy we wanted to leave, blending our personal goals with a shared commitment to impact others positively. The relationship felt both exhilarating and comforting, a combination of passionate energy and profound stability. I understood that this was the culmination of not only my romantic journey but also the personal growth that had been painstakingly cultivated over years of adversity. Chloe was no longer just a partner, she had become the embodiment of love reclaimed, refined, and realized in its purest form. Through our shared experiences, I also came to understand the true meaning of trust and loyalty. Chloe's unwavering support in the face of my past, her patience with my occasional insecurities, and her belief in my character reaffirmed that the deepest love is rooted in mutual respect and understanding. I had been humiliated once, but now, with her by my side, I experienced a love that elevated me, encouraged me, and allowed me to embrace both my strengths and vulnerabilities. Every challenge we faced together strengthened our bond, and I realized that this was not merely a romantic connection, it was a partnership forged through shared purpose, resilience, and unwavering commitment to each other's growth. The day finally arrived when everything I had endured, every humiliation, heartbreak, and sacrifice, seemed to converge into a moment of clarity and triumph. Chloe and I had grown inseparable, our relationship deepened by shared experiences, mutual respect, and a profound understanding of each other's journeys. I had achieved wealth, influence, and personal growth, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my dignity and learned the true meaning of love. The irony of life was not lost on me. The woman who once humiliated me now watched as I stood tall, not as a man seeking revenge, but as one who had fully risen from the ashes of betrayal. The event was intimate, a celebration of our journey and our love, surrounded by close friends, family, and colleagues who had supported us along the way. Emma was present, of course, a silent observer, unable to interfere or diminish the significance of the moment. I noticed her glances, fleeting and filled with recognition, perhaps tinged with regret or envy, though I refused to dwell on her emotions. My focus was on Chloe, whose smile lit up the room and whose presence reminded me that the trials I had endured had been instrumental in leading me to a love that was genuine, reciprocal, and transformative. Every obstacle I had faced, every setback, and every moment of self-doubt had culminated in this chapter of my life, full of triumph and fulfillment. Standing beside Chloe, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, the nights spent wrestling with heartbreak, the days consumed by the pursuit of reinvention, and the moments when humiliation had seemed unbearable. Each experience, though painful at the time, had served as a catalyst for growth, shaping me into a man who could appreciate and nurture the depth of love I now shared. Chloe represented everything Emma never could: authenticity, compassion, intelligence, and a willingness to build a partnership based on mutual respect. I had learned the hard way that true love is not conditional upon status or wealth, but rooted in character, integrity, and the ability to support and challenge each other in equal measure. As I addressed our guests, I spoke not just of success, but of the journey that had made that success meaningful. I recounted lessons learned from hardship, the importance of resilience, and the transformative power of embracing challenges rather than allowing them to define us. I shared my story as a testament to personal growth, emphasizing that true triumph lies in overcoming adversity with dignity and integrity. Chloe stood beside me, her hand in mine, a constant reminder that love could be both tender and empowering, a force that elevates rather than diminishes. The room listened intently, and even Emma's quiet presence seemed to acknowledge the truth of my transformation. In the quiet moments after the celebration, Chloe and I shared reflections on the twists of fate that had led us to this point. I told her about my journey, my fears, and the moments of vulnerability that had shaped me, knowing that she understood and accepted every part of my story. Her empathy and unwavering support were a source of profound comfort, reinforcing the realization that the love we shared was not born of circumstance alone, but of conscious choice, mutual respect, and a deep understanding of each other's past and aspirations. For the first time, I felt completely whole, knowing that the man I had become was worthy of the love and admiration I now received. The most poignant moment came when I realized that Emma, once the center of my world, had become a symbol of my growth rather than a source of pain. She had witnessed the full extent of my transformation, the wealth, the confidence, and the love I had cultivated, yet she could not diminish or control it. The humiliation she had once inflicted no longer held power over me, it had been transmuted into strength, wisdom, and perspective. Chloe's presence, love, and partnership were a living affirmation that the trials of the past had been instrumental in shaping a future that was far greater than I had ever imagined. In the days that followed, Chloe and I began planning our life together with excitement and clarity. We discussed ambitions, personal goals, and shared dreams, constructing a vision of a future where success and love were intertwined. Our relationship was no longer about proving anything to the world, it was about mutual growth, support, and the joy of building a life together. I had learned that the most fulfilling victories are not those measured by wealth or public acclaim, but by the depth of connection, trust, and intimacy cultivated with someone who truly sees and values you. Chloe had become the embodiment of that lesson, and I treasured every moment of our journey together. Looking back, I understood the full circle of my life, from the humiliation Emma had inflicted to the reinvention that allowed me to rise, to the unexpected encounter with Chloe that led to authentic love. Every painful moment had been a necessary step, shaping me into a man capable of appreciating, nurturing, and sustaining a relationship grounded in respect and affection. The journey had not only restored my dignity but had also taught me the transformative power of perseverance, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence. In Chloe, I found a love that healed, inspired, and propelled me to live fully, and in that realization, I finally felt the profound satisfaction of a life reclaimed, a heart renewed, and a story completed. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from.